Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, if you have not received a binder, please let me know. There are plenty of extras. Yours to keep, yours to be able to place all the forthcoming handouts, and your Bereishis HaTorah, the blessings on the Torah that I gave you last week. If anybody does not have one, please let me know.
You don't get it.
There.
We only need like one of these because we only have one of these, right?
That's correct.
So one per family.
Is there not enough?
I don't know.
I gave out folded cardstock. That is for you to write your first name and to be able to prop it up in front of you. Thank you, whoever. Lori, thank you very much. Looks like you came prepared. Good, that's great. As someone mentioned, maybe it's worthwhile to put your name on the inside as well, just in case you don't know who you are. Thank you. Grammar.
Grammar?
Yeah. Yeah. If you know how long I spent making sure that everything is accurate. Yeah. Grammatical. The dot falls out. Thank you. Hi. They're going around. Okay. How about every letter a different color?
Juvenile.
Okay. Okay. All right. If you haven't said Bereishis HaTorah yet, I'll give you another 30 seconds to do so, and we will move on. Nice to have you on my side.
It takes 4 days. It's the fourth day before they go on. Right, so.
Thank you.
I do have to, Linda.
All right. Progress is being made. We are up to verse 2. The truth is that we're not really up to verse 2. But I kind of felt bad for everyone because just in case you're feeling a little indignant and embarrassed to tell people that all you've done is one verse, so at least now you can tell people that you've done 2. I was just speaking with someone this evening, explaining to him the chorus, and I told him that what we sacrifice on quantity, we gain in quality. And I hope all of you recognize that. Of course, those of you that didn't recognize that are no longer here. Which kind of says something about those of you who are here. I won't mention any names, but there were a number of people that felt that this course was a bit over their heads. And just in case you're feeling that as well, those people are present. They are sticking it out. They are challenging themselves to stretch their necks to perhaps make sure that it doesn't go over their heads, but it actually hits their head. And they have decided amongst themselves, I did not say a word, to meet once a week outside of class time to either review or prepare. And I applaud their efforts. I will not mention them by name, but I think that it is worthy of mention that clearly if one is to gain from this class, clearly more time could/should be invested. Bereishis bara Elokim es hashamayim ves haaretz. Just to review what we spoke about last week. Es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. We have 2 extra words, as was pointed out astutely. Those 2 extra words indicate that it's not just shamayim ve'aretz, not just the heavens and the earth, but anybody remember? Okay, so the 2 separate ideas. One thing is everything that is subordinate to these general categories. Right? Clearly the fact that everything was created at once in potential form. And there was another element that we mentioned, and that was what's the difference between shamayim and aretz? Shemayim refers to spirituality versus Aretz referring to physicality, material reality. So two separate ideas. And I failed to mention last week that what I share with you is but the tip of the iceberg. There is much, much, much more to be discussed. In fact, I was sharing with one of my colleagues that the challenge of teaching this course is not what to say, but rather what not to say. Because I don't want to overload anyone. Does that come as a surprise? I don't want to overload anyone. And yet, we always have to recognize that even as deep as it sounds, there is much more depth to it. In fact, while it may be true that a standard 3-year-old may be able to tell you about what took place during creation, even the greatest Kabbalists cannot tell you what took place in creation because there is much, much more than necessarily meets the eye. So that is verse 1. We move to verse 2. Let's take a look. Page 2, page 3 in your Chumashim. By the way, there are 3 copies just in case you still would like one. They are not reserved, so they are free for the purchasing, just in case you still want one. V'ha'aretz. We move directly to the land. In other words, as we mentioned 2 weeks ago, that it seems that within a moment, Shemayim is cut off the roster. It's almost as though, who cares? Or maybe let's refine that and say, for our purposes, this is what's important. So Va'aretz, we immediately turn to the land, to physical reality, and we describe it in very enigmatic terms. Because we can take a look at the words, Va'aretz haisa sohu vavohu. We will reserve translation for right now. The v'choshech al pnei sahom, again, we can translate the words, but it's going to beg for an explanation. And v'ruach elokim, the Spirit of God, mirachefes, was floating or hovering al pnei hamoyim, upon the waters, literally on the face of the waters or the surface of the water. Now clearly the very first question that everybody probably has, well, let me throw it out. If you were doing this on your own, which by the way, I believe next week we will be splitting up into chavrusas, into study partners. So just in case you haven't concluded who your study partner is, you can spend a few minutes after class and I'd be happy to make the shidduch next week if you're interested. And on your own, if you were taking a look at this verse, what would be the questions that would perhaps be bothering you? Good. Unformed? Okay. So you're wondering about the translations of the translation. Good. Excellent question. Or was darkness created? We'll talk about that. Yes. How does Hashem hover? Good. What is this, some sort of hovercraft floating over something? Jet skiing?
Are we going to interpret the earth as we interpreted the earth in the previous point?
How did we do it then?
That it was physicality.
Let's assume.
So physicality was unformed, I'm guessing?
Okay. We'll discuss that tonight. Is the abyss a place or a concept? Good. Excellent. Just 1 second. Carry on.
Would you change, isn't totally something different than...
We'll get there. Good. So you're wondering about these enigmatic words, these terms that really find no equivalent in the text. Yes?
With this darkness covers the surface of the abyss, surface says there is some kind of form, but if where there's alchemy, it's on the face of or the surface of, but to put it as a facing or a veneer or something on the surface, there has to be something there to cover.
Good. So you're saying if it's some physical object, then I can understand a surface. If it's a spiritual concepts don't have surfaces. Good. Yes.
I know the word technology because, but the word Mayan is in that word.
Good. Excellent. And
So I'm wondering if the heavens were water.
Great point. In fact, last week somebody asked the question of why the heavens are in plural forms. Those of you who are unfamiliar with the grammatical rules of biblical Hebrew, the Yud Mem at the very end of a word creates a plural form of the word. Shamayim makes whatever it is plural. So I was thinking about discussing that this week, but I decided that to go back to the first pasuk would cause too many groans. So, but we're going to get back to that concept. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. Any other questions? The breath. Good. Good.
It seems like breath is going to have also a spiritual or connotation how it relates to the word above.
Good. Excellent point. So the word ruach is, even though it's translated over here as breath is correct. But we perhaps are familiar with ruach meaning spirit, the spirit of God. And the word ruach in modern Hebrew means wind. Now that's interesting. Wind.
You mean one of your favorite words, Steve?
Wind. Energy. So, wind and spirituality. Do they have anything in common? Good. Excellent point. You can't see it. Can you feel wind? Ooh, that's interesting. You can't see it, but you could feel it. Wow. That's right. You could see its effects. You could see its effect. Good. You could feel the effect, you could see the effect, but you just can't touch it, point to it. Interesting analogy. So the fact that spirituality and wind, or I would say wind is a borrowed word from this word in Chumash, ruach, so the breath, which is the air, which is you can't really put your finger on it, but we know it exists. So Ruach spirit and Ruach the breath of Elohim are going to have to be merged one to the other. Good. Any other questions before we go on?
That kind of indicates that Elohim is alive.
Why is that?
Because if you were dead, you wouldn't have breath. To breathe is to live.
Okay. What is the difference between a live person and a dead person? If a scientist had to do empirical data on a dead person versus a live person, would there be anything measurable that they can identify as missing in a dead person?
Any kind of a response? Lack of response?
Breathing. Good. So we would say we would identify it as the soul, which is essentially a part of
Life.
a part of God. But we didn't get there yet, because that'll be next year's class when we get to verse 6.
I feel like 3 words that mean, I know nefesh is one, ruach is one, and akira is the third one.
Good. Different aspects of soul, yes. We're not going to confuse the masses yet, but thank you. Great point. Okay, so let's tackle these 4 enigmatic words. Tohu, vohu, choshech, and tohu. So let's take a look at the translation. And as accurate as it could be, it is totally inaccurate, because languages are that. They are limited in their ability to describe reality. And of course, if there's a certain reality that's out of our experience, then we just simply don't have the words for it. I was once told that Eskimos have somewhere approximately 400 words to describe snow. Why do they have 400 words to describe snow? Because when snow is ubiquitous in your world, and it's everywhere, so then just to say the word snow is meaningless. We need to now start refining what kind of snow. Is it wet snow, the type of snow that's good for snowballs, the type of snow that's good for igloos, the type of snow that's different types of snow. Now, for somebody that grew up in the South, you probably aren't familiar with that concept, but for somebody that moved to the South with a snow shovel, and the mover looked at us and smiled without saying anything as he took the snow shovel, and it's still hanging. So it's still hanging in our garage waiting for the snow removal. The snow is snow. I mean, that's it. What's the big deal? So clearly, when we're dealing with concepts that are beyond us, we're not going to have adequate terminology to describe it. So we're always going to run short when we're trying to translate these. And still, nevertheless, an attempt is made to try to identify what these are. Tohu, unformed. Bohu, desolate. Choshech, darkness. And Tehom, abyss. Again, what? Now, there's a little wishbone under the hay of the word Tehom. It happens to be upside down. Now, you may ask, how do you know which is right side up in a wishbone? I don't know. But there's a wishbone nonetheless. Does everybody see the wishbone? Those of you who do not have the large edition can look on with someone else. Now that little wishbone is one of the many cantillation marks. One of the many cantillation marks. A cantillation mark is the tune, the chant, right? The tune, the trup, the sing-song that the words of the Torah are sung to. And it's not just to make your Shabbos morning experience pleasant, but essentially they're there for punctuation purposes. And many a joke is formed from a mispunctuated statement. Now somebody mentioned to me yesterday that a panda bear eats, shoots, and leaves. So does it eat, shoots, and leaves? Or does it eat, shoots, and leaves? So any joke that you need to explain is just not funny, but whatever. The point is that punctuation is essential for meaning. And very often the punctuation will be obvious, but it's in the not so obvious places that we need to define punctuation. Now this little wishbone in Aramaic is called an esnachta. You could spell it phonetically. There is no right way to spell that. Esnachta. And an esnachta means a pause. What we would call a sequitur. It divides the verse. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is no verse in Torah that does not have an esnachta. So in other words, every verse will have the first half and the second half of the statement. Yes?
How would work have vowels? Does the Torah have that mark?
The Torah does not have that mark. In fact, it would be a lot easier for a Baal Koreh if the Torah had all these marks.
Who decided the mark?
So the marks, the nekudos, and the vowelization and the cantillation marks are all carried down b'Masorah, tradition. And that's why we know accurately exactly where it needs to go. Now, why does it make a difference in this verse? So, I suggest to you to read the verse as follows. There are two halves of the verse. The first half that describes one thing, and the second half that describes something else. I am not really explaining myself so well because I'm waiting for you to take a look and to see what in heaven's name I'm talking about. Physical and spiritual separation. Okay? Explain.
The first part is physical, it applies to the physical. second part class.
Okay, good. Anyone else? What would you, let me just give you a hint. Let me give you some direction. Tohu vohu choshech and tehom. Even were we not able to accurately define these words, what do you think the Torah is describing here? Well said, mumbo jumbo. Could have said it better than that. Thank you. The Torah. How so? Okay, when we get to the light, we can talk about that. But in the meantime, I don't see any particular reference to something enlightening. In fact, the word choshech seems to indicate the opposite. Right? So all these four words, sorry, what? It starts out.
And then we come to the birthplace.
So you're saying layers.
Right, that even different halves, but it seems like this is was there first.
Okay, assuming that this is a chronological description, let's assume that it's just a simple description of what was there. What was there? Nothing. Okay, there was nothing there. Now, we're really describing nothingness in some very flowery terms here. Now, I mean, nothing is nothing, no? Isn't nothing nothing? Correct me if I'm wrong. How many for nothing is nothing? No?
The absence of something.
Nothing was something.
Absence, okay. The absence of something is?
Not nothing.
Is not nothing. Okay, Valium pills will be distributed.
I read that was the one.
Okay. Okay, whiskey next week. Anybody want to sponsor?
The earth was undefinable.
Undefinable.
It didn't mean it wasn't there.
So there was something.
So you couldn't define it.
Okay, so, let's get this straight. Was there something or was there nothing?
There was something.
There was something. Okay. There has to be something. Ooh, what? Shh. Shh. That statement needs quiet.
That's good. Okay,
What was that?
There was something, but it was all unorganized.
There was something, but it was all unorganized.
Or chaos.
Or disorganized. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chaos reigned.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
No.
Because
No what?
it's not just unorganized,
Okay.
because there is a surface and an abyss.
Good.
So something's on the surface and something's the abyss.
That's assuming that the way we're understanding it is correct. In other words, if there is a concept of surface and abyss in the way that we are familiar with surfaces and abysses.
When I say surface, that's your idea of a lake. So, and again, it's water versus land, water versus earth. Sometimes, because the Spirit of God is hovering over something that is not solid. Just because it's a surface doesn't mean, I don't mean a solid surface.
Good.
Some kind of ethereal surface.
Good. So again, clearly this verse is perhaps the most enigmatic verse in Torah. Hands down. You take a look at the commentaries, and all the commentaries are struggling to try to isolate these terms. If you want, on your own time, you can take a look at Rashi. Rashi, talks about tohu as being wonder and astonishment, and bo is desolation and empty space and abyss. You're kind of left a little, yes?
Wasn't there a start of organization? Because you already, this is after we already said, or the book already said,
that there was heaven and earth.
Good. Okay, so that's exactly what...
Some type of, right away off the get-go, some kind of organization because they have A and B?
So that's exactly where we're heading. Any other questions before we move on? Yes?
The word Mirachas,
Yes?
is that in the
Present.
So the first part of the
Mirachas.
sentence is in the past, and the second part is in the present.
It is a retrospective describing something that was taking place then. That's a great point. Let's focus on that for a moment. The point that was just made was the second word in the verse. Take a look at the second word of the verse. The second word of the verse is Hayta or Haisa, which means was. Now, question. We had verse number 1 that describes the creation of the world. We have verse number 2 that describes the state that the world was in. When was?
Prior to.
In the beginning.
The what? In the beginning. Is what is being described here what took place, the description, the state of reality before creation or after creation? Think before you answer. The question was again, this verse in verse 2 is describing a state of reality. Is it describing the state of reality prior to creation or after creation? By the way, you're not going to get away with any one-word answer. So anybody that wants to stick their neck out, anybody have an explanation of why they feel who thinks it's before creation? Okay, anybody want to stick their neck out?
I'm going to go on that.
The verse 2 is describing a state of reality as a disorganized, amorphous chaotic thing. Now, is that a description of reality before creation, or is that a description of reality after creation? So those who say before creation, please raise your hand. Does anybody want to represent the group and explain?
Go ahead. Go on.
Yes, Jay.
I changed my thinking previously. I'm going to go on record before creation because the first act of creation is in number 3 where it says, what did he want?
Okay.
Anything that was existing before that is prior to creation.
Everything before that is what?
Anything that existed before he says the or is prior to creation.
Okay, anybody want to represent the other group?
Didn't you say that everything was created?
Anybody want to represent the other group? Wow.
I think he
Jay,
created.
way to go. You've convinced the masses. Either that or everyone's like, I'm not taking any stab at
I
this.
think he created the chaos, and then he brought it all together. Then he started to organize it. And therefore, I think this took place after creation in the sense that he, being Hashem, created the chaos.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Now, let me ask you a question. Could we've heard two groups? Yes. Third version. Wow, you're always into the third version.
Until now, it's all meant to be once upon a time.
Okay.
He's just describing what's once upon a time, and then we get into
Once upon a time? When was time created?
Yeah, where did you read that?
the same time when it was created.
Who was?
You can only have once upon a time when there's time. Time is obviously post-creation.
Well, Mitchell knows about
Why do you say that?
because that's what Bereishis means. But I didn't want to discuss it tonight because that's verse 1. Okay, so if your minds are scrambled, please say aye. Just kidding. Okay, good. That's exactly what we're talking about, chaos. So, yes. Tohu, vohu, choshech, and tohu. That's chaos. No, it doesn't actually mean it, but clearly nothingness and emptiness and darkness and abyss all somehow relate to this concept of unformed, chaotic state of being. Now, good. Do you have some more?
Including the Hebrew itself, because there's a combination here of Bara is the masculine past tense for created. Elohim is a plural noun. And then later there's Ba'aret is always feminine, so Ba'aret has opposite. Mirachefet is the present feminine form, singular.
Right?
Elohim, which is...
No, the Merachefes is referring to the Ruach, which is feminine. The Ruach Elohim was Merachefes. Okay, but we're not going to confuse anybody any further. Okay, so no more comments, please. Let me talk.
Yeah, we've been waiting.
I was going to say, you better talk.
Yeah, we've been waiting for you. We're listening.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Time's up. Okay, so, boy, I really had a lot more to say tonight. But I'm glad everybody was interactive. That was good. That was a very good, thought-provoking session. A simple verse which is not so simple. But, in a nutshell, the disorganized mass could not have been prior to creation. Because prior to creation, there was nothing. Nothing is not unorganized. Nothing is nothing. I'm sorry to burst anybody's bubble, but nothing is nothing. And therefore, nothing cannot be disorganized. If I had nothing in my office, then it wouldn't look like the way it does.
Chaotic.
Not the shul office.
Chaotic.
Right, because it has nothing. It has nothing in it. So nothingness cannot be disorganized. We mentioned that the verse number 1 describes creation, which means that everything in its potential form was created. That is the moment of creation. That's the moment that time was created. That's the moment that everything in this world was created in potential form. The next verse describes the state of reality. It does not describe the state of reality before creation, because before creation there was nothing. Therefore, by definition, it has to describe the state of reality after the world was created. Now, that begs the question. Does everybody understand that so far? That begs the question. God created the world. God created the world, and he needed to create it chaotically and then organize it?
No.
Why not
Just
start in an organized manner to begin with? So, this is a philosophical enigma, because it seems rather strange for us to describe reality as being this disorganized mumbo-jumbo, and for us to describe that this is the way God created the world. When does the organization begin? Do we know? Verse 3. So next semester, when we get to it, we'll discuss the organization of the chaos. But the way verse 2 is describing, it's describing the world as it was post verse 1, and describing it as chaos, which means that God purposefully and purposely created the world chaotically in order to organize it. That seems a little strange.
Well, wait. Order. Order is disorganized.
Right?
That's what organization is. Order.
It is order. But why create something in disorder if you're only going to move to the next step to order it?
Suppose you have a...
That's our interpretation. Maybe God didn't consider it to be disorder.
Good. These words describe creation, reality, as a disorderly reality. So now the question we're asking is, can we understand God's intent as he delivered it through the Torah that is presented to man to attempt to understand him. Yes? No, no such thing. Okay, good. Excellent. Excellent. Not a stupid thought at all. In fact, that's where I was planning on heading tonight, but we'll wait till next week to discuss that. Yes?
This is the same creator who during Noah's time elected to wipe out the world.
True.
And if it wasn't for Noah, he would have started all over again.
True. And therefore?
God, who threatened to destroy all of the soon-to-be Jews if they didn't buckle down.
So what do you want to say with that? Therefore what?
My personal concept, God creates things and we have to deal with them. And there's no guarantee how it's going to turn out.
That's true.
It's still there.
That may be true, but that doesn't explain why somebody would create something in a disorganized way only to then go ahead and organize it. You want to tell me that I create a machine or I start a project and then I notice that it's not working out as planned, so I scrub that and start over. That has nothing to do with this. Or so it seems.
If I had a puzzle that had 1,000 pieces to it, and I opened up the box,
Dumped it out.
dumped it on the table, it's unorganized.
Right.
And now I put the puzzle together,
Right.
and now it's organized.
Right.
So my question to you is, if it is present instead of before creation, is that what you said?
It is after creation, not before.
Why is the verb past tense was?
Because clearly before God decided to organize it, it was in a state of chaos.
The purpose of the Torah is to teach us. It's a guidebook for mankind. Then, Hashem created the world and everything in place in one day, or in one moment.
Right?
In 1 second.
Right.
7 days.
Right. Great question.
So if this is the guidebook for us, then it's teaching us to take a process by which we can live our lives. We can be in chaos, and out of that chaos we can go piece by piece, and little by little, and end up with the result.
Amazing. That's exactly what we're going to discuss next week. Excellent. Any other thoughts? Okay. Brain fry? Yeah.
I was going to say that when you see something start as nothing, and then you finish a product, it's so much more appreciated. And
Good. We need contrast.
Right.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll talk about the light and darkness. Excellent. Any other thoughts?
We talked about the light and darkness
Last week? Oh, sorry, we're not going to go back to verse 1. And even if we do, I won't say that we are. Like this will. All right. Have a wonderful evening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Torah Media Atlanta. Won't you consider making a donation to help support this important work? Just go to TorahMediaAtlanta.com and click on the donate link. Thank you very much.